Welcome to the Love Your Face podcast. As sisters with a passion for possibility, we will be discussing mindful living through unspoken fashion. Join us in our conversation and discover how everything begins with a thought, even the way you dress. Hello, Therina.
Hello, Marcy. Nice to be here today.
Hey, I'm so excited to meet your friend, Anne.
Oh my goodness, I'm excited to share her with you. My friend and my mentor, Anne Marks. She is such a delightful person, very efficient and amazing. And she's been a person who has encouraged me a lot in my face reading journey. And let me just tell you how amazing she is intellectually. She's really smart. She has 2 master's degrees, one in theology and the other one in counseling theology. And she is a qualified counselor. And she taught counseling for 20 years or so. And then she became the first woman executive at I love the name of this business, Gray and Christmas in Chicago.
Gray and Christmas?
Gray and Christmas. That's a fantastic name. Anyway, she worked there for a while and made a difference as a woman, opened up a lot of things for other women.
Wow.
And then she became a director of Young Presidents Organization and moved to Texas. And she has traveled the whole world. And she has been interested in face reading for 26 years. And she, of course, learned it from Matt Fulfer, the one who wrote the book on face reading. And she became obsessed with face reading because he read her face and she recognized the value of having her face read. And now she has taught many, many presentations and workshops with Mac, and they are partners. She is his partner to create this movement of spreading face reading. And I get to talk with her twice a month, her and Mac, and learn more about face reading. So I am so excited to share her with you.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank
you for your patience today.
No problem at all. I'm happy to be here and see y'all.
Yep, we are delighted to have you with us.
It's nice to meet you, Anne. And how about telling us a little bit about you? You're a therapist? What kind of therapist?
Well, my degree was in counseling psychology, and I majored within that marriage and family counseling. I always believed in family. I had such a great family. My parents, they were just fabulous, and my brother and sister. But at any rate, growing up in a really good family. But as a teacher, I saw so many children that did not have a happy family. I met so many parents struggling in every way. And I had the good fortune to actually do that in a ghetto in Philadelphia, and then a very ultra suburban area in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So I always said I went from inner city to outer space, but I really learned, even though I felt like I had come from a very middle class family, I really had the blessing to be in the environment of people who were struggling, did not have enough, children coming to school with no breakfast. This is back in the 60s. So, right. and then working with them, and then moving to a town where the kids really had everything, but it was another kind of ghetto. It was just, so the combination of that and my teaching really led me to want to help people in terms of living better lives, being more fulfilled, happier, and the family unit. So that again was my major. And I graduated with that master's. Earlier, I had another one in theology. from Villanova, but then the master's was from Akron University. Anyway, I was fresh out of graduate school looking for a job as a counselor. And I answered an ad in the newspaper in Chicago. I had moved to Chicago because I had a friend there that would later become my husband, but I was tracking him across the country. And I get to Chicago and I'm looking for a job. And I answered a job in the newspaper for a counselor. And I got called into the company for an interview. And when I went in, I'm thinking it's a counselor job, like you just typically think of counselor. But in that particular company, they called the people who worked with their clients counselors, but they were outplacement, which was helping people find jobs. But you say, well, that's kind of a far cry from family therapy. Actually, it isn't at all, because we're talking about working with the breadwinner of the family who is now out of work. So that creates all kinds of dynamics within the family, and really supporting that person and helping them market themselves and get a job really saved lives. So it all kind of goes around. And I felt like my work, both interiorly in a spiritual realm and along with the education of psychology and working with that part of our psyche and everything, the combination of that really tailor-made me to do this particular job. So that's kind of how it all unfolded. So but then I'll go on, because I think we're going to talk about this face reading. I was well into my career with this company. I actually stayed there 14 years. But I was on 5 to 7 flights every week across the country. I ended up marrying that man in Chicago. We moved to Atlanta, but I kept the job in Chicago. And so I commuted every Monday morning. I would leave my home in Georgia at 3 a.m. to get the red eye to Chicago, and then the train into the office, because our office was right across from the Sears Tower, right in the heart of Chicago. And I would be the first one there for the 9 a.m. meeting. And I had come from Atlanta to get there, and everybody else was coming in from their home in Chicago. At any rate, I did that for 11 years. And then I told the boss that I would need to not come to that meeting anymore. By that time, I was the executive vice president. They hired me actually as a well, I can't think of the word, like they never hired a woman as a counselor. They only had men because they were working with executives who basically were men. But this was back in the 80s when women started getting up into management positions. So they thought it might be a good idea to have a woman on the staff, but it was with great reservation. As it turned out, the president thought it was one of the best moves he ever made was to hire a woman, and subsequently hired many other women. But at any rate, when I was toward the end of my time there, I had about 40 people reporting directly to me from North America. And this is getting to how I got into the face reading. One of the salesmen for the company heard Mac Fulford at breakfast read people's faces. And he was so awestruck by what he saw him do. The whole trip back to the office, he kept thinking of me and my counselors and how much this could help us better connect with our clients.
Mm-hmm.
because face reading, is basically all it is it's a way of connecting. It's not the only way, but it's a really good way,
Mm-hmm.
because you can do it in a minute right away. It's an instant. So he called me up, the salesman called me up and offered to send Mac to my meeting that I held once a year in Chicago, and brought all my counselors in. And as luck would have it, I had a space in my program, a couple hours, and I didn't know what I would use it for. And I thought, well, maybe that'll just fill that hole in, and it'll be before things get really good. So if he ruins the meeting, I still have time to recover. But as it turned out, he was definitely the best part of the whole weekend, because people really did see this tool, this way of understanding people just by seeing their face, even before you speak with somebody. I thought it was just going to be a joke. I mean, I was, with all my background in psychology and everything, I heard of face painting, but I just never heard of face reading. And I thought it was just going to ruin my meeting. Well,
Did not take it serious, huh?
No, I just kind of hoped and prayed that it wouldn't be too bad. But when Matt came into the room and he saw all of us sitting it was in a U shape. He gave a little introduction, but he said the best way to tell you what face reading is to show you. I'm just going to go one by one around the room. You all know each other, and just tell you a couple things I see on your face. So I'm sitting at the end of the U. I'm just chilling. I'm sitting back and thinking, oh, this will be entertaining. But I tell you, he started out, and by the time he got to the third person, my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing him say, because I had hired all these people, and you really get to know the people you work with. I mean, you spend more time with them than the people you live with, so it was like, it was stunning. And one of the people, though, he did say something to him that my first reaction was, I think he missed that one. And so he went on and on. But I thought more about what he said to him and how I knew this man. And I realized that actually was true as well. So he didn't get very far. He was about the middle of the group when he looked at the man, and he said, your intimacy requirements are not being met in your personal life. Well, everybody, like, the room got really super quiet. And we don't often say things like that to another person. But the truth of the matter was, this man, one of my very best counselors, he had lost his wife to cancer about a year before this meeting. And I mean, she was his life. And she went through it was several years actually until she passed. And then after that, he just worked. I mean, work was his life now that his wife was gone. And the way we run our life, it really shows up in our eyes, in our eyelids. And the left side of our face. So I'm putting my hand on the left side of our face, my face. That side is really about our personal life, and the right side shows the more about how we take ourselves out into the world. Well, with this man, his eye on his personal side was all puff, was really, he had this eye puff. And when our eye puffs out and hangs down, it is about our intimacy requirements not being met. His right eye actually was pretty good, because that was about his work. But his personal life, he had lost the love of his life. And so it showed up on his face. When Max said, your intimacy requirements aren't being met in your personal life, nothing was more true for this man. And so that was like when he said that to him, and I knew the story, it was very, very impressive. After that, as he moved around the room and each person he got closer to me, I started feeling a little nervous being the boss, what is he going to say and all that. But when he got to me, he actually talked about my eye puffs too, but I had both ballooning out, hanging down, which is a different thing. That means that I had a track record of giving away a lot more than I was getting back. I told you, flying 7 flights a week and working. I was actually working 18-hour days for over a long time, commuting home to my house and husband. So I was in a dangerous spot in my life and I didn't know it, but I needed a wake-up call. And actually, when Mac talked about my eye puffs, I got a wake-up call. It was like, I've got to look into this. So he had a book. I bought a book for everybody. His book had just come out. So I think he started liking me just because I bought his book to start, because he hadn't sold any and he was self-published. So that kind of put me on the map with Mac at that particular point. But the thing was, I couldn't wait to get the book and go to the page about the eye puffs. And there is the moderate eye puffs. That was me to a T, and about being careful, you need to take time for yourself. You need rest, relaxation, diet. Actually, you need to pay attention to your own needs instead of giving it all away. But on the bottom of the page is the picture of severe eye puffs. And when I looked at that, and it talked about you may need counseling, you may be drinking too much, and so on. Basically, I was drinking too much. I probably did need counseling. It was that light bolt of lightning that struck me. And all of a sudden, I realized that my life was on a dead-end path. And if I continued, no telling what would have happened. So I changed. I started going in. I only allowed myself in the office 12 hours, 7 to 7.
Wow.
I know it's sad, but that was a big improvement.
It is.
That was like 6 hours less. I took more time for myself. Actually, my husband and I went on a vacation soon after that. I think we were in Turkey and Egypt and all, but it gave me a perspective. I see everything always works the way it's supposed to. I just bought a t-shirt that says trust the universe. That's the motto.
Yeah, so true.
So how fortuitous, after getting this wake-up call, I was able to remove myself and take a look at my life and how it was all moving. And the combination of that ended up turning me around significantly. So I tell people that face reading changed my life, but saved my life is probably more accurate. So that's the kernel of why I'm a giant advocate for face reading.
I'm curious if you probably working 18 hours a day, you knew that was probably hard on you, but you still pushed through it.
Right. Yeah.
But you needed that permission to step away. Things that you already knew, but you needed that permission.
Interesting how we would tell someone else that advice, but we don't take it ourselves. If you saw someone else doing that, you would tell them to slow it down.
Yeah, and people, even we hear the term workaholic, and I always said I don't really qualify, and I still agree to that. They said, "Oh, you're working." Actually, I'm not. And the way I know that is because I would never miss one holiday, one vacation. Any time I had a chance to go somewhere else in the world, I would take it. Alcoholics can't take time off. I would make sure I took all the time off. But it's well, just for me personally, I probably am pretty intense on most things I believe in, and then I always give 110%. I still see that in my life. It's kind of how I'm put together, but I was in a serious situation, so thankfully that changed, and that's been a lot of years. That's like 25 years ago that all happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's fun that changed your perspective, because like you said, you are an intense person.
Yeah.
And Marcy and I talk about thoughts a lot. Your thoughts about that intensity, you always have been able to play hard, work hard,
Right.
create that balance somehow, but
Yeah.
changing your thoughts about what's important.
Yeah. The other thing that turned out really serendipitously, I'll use that word, is I quit that job, which I never thought I'd be able to do that, but I did. I quit that job, and I really didn't want to work anymore. I didn't want to have a job. It wasn't that I didn't need the money. I just was eventually tired of
Your heart
working.
told you it was time to change, huh?
Yeah. So actually, I was sought after by a man who lived in Dallas, and his wife worked at the Young Presidents Organization, and this is a worldwide organization of presidents of companies, high-level executives, entrepreneurs who are not yet 50 years old. So they're young presidents. But at any rate, their headquarters was in Dallas. And I had to move to Dallas to take the job, which is right next door to Fort Worth. So it immediately gave me the opportunity to begin doing more going to Mac's classes and learning more about the face reading. Because geographically now I was next door. And so that's how I got involved with actually doing face reading and, giving classes and giving workshops and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So it was I liked the Young President. I was there 4 years. I traveled all over the world. Presidents of companies, they're their own, they're a special lot in and of themselves. But I think my, heart really got wrapped up in the face reading because I saw the value of it for people to really connect. We're starved. We humans are starved for connection. We're starved to be seen. There's so many gadgets and gizmos, and everything is like viewed. And how often, like even if we're with somebody, you see people just, on their phone out for dinner with their
two people together and both looking at their own phones.
Yeah. They're not even looking at each other. And so in meeting so many people, I would say, I know you're not going to trash your cell phone when you get out of this room, but you've got to take time to actually be with others, look at another person, look at yourself, read your own face. And it's just a huge plus. There's no downside to better meeting and understanding a person better. Just the feeling a person gets when they feel that they've been seen is it's just like, it's such a unique experience for so many people. They just don't get that. And when they do, they can't get enough of it. It just is transforms them.
Well, I think like these tools that we have, like the phone or even like the Zoom, they're tools to help connect us, but it can also be easy to distract us from the humaning that's going on in front of us.
Right.
And, that's the real stuff. That's the real stuff going on right in front of your face. You see so many people. Do you find yourself, do you just automatically look to their face and read them automatically now?
Yes. You don't, it's like when you do it enough, and anybody can do this, it is like a second language. So you don't have to take each word and start thinking about what that word means. So when you get to know features, then you just know what that feature means. You don't have to like go through it. Now, if you're going to read their face, that obviously you have to articulate about the features, but it isn't. So everybody, their face it's like a book of their life, and it's all available. Pretty much see it. The other night, Easter, just 2 days ago, was my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
So, yeah. So my friend, he baked a cake, and my sister-in-law lives 4 doors over, and she had 2 nieces visiting. So I thought, we have to find people to help us eat this cake. So we invited them. Well, the 2 nieces knew about this face reading, and they were so funny because they were like afraid. And I didn't know. They told my sister-in-law, they told her, do you think she could read our face and that? And so, well, you can ask her, So we're sitting around the table with the cake and all, and they're like elbowing each other. And I was really kind of funny. And then they said, well, could you think you could read our faces? Well, of course I did. And they were just stunned, that I could know that, but I didn't have to think, now let me look at your face. They sat down. I met them for the first time when they came over, and it was like, it was there. But it transformed the birthday party. You can feel the energy just change, and it was really nice.
That's an interesting story that went from them being afraid to feeling accepted by you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then wanting to share more about who they are. That's the other part. It's sort of like not a can of worms. That's not a good way to phrase it. But when you tell people about their face, it brings up experiences in their face, and they get to share that. Again, how often do we have that kind of opportunity? But see, my thinking is, when I read someone's face, the important thing is they're listening, they feel accepted. It does touch them. It does bring up their life. And it often brings up the hurts in their life, some of the pain, things that they've shoved down, don't really want to talk about. Nobody wants to hear about it anyway. But when they get these deep lines in here, lines down here, lines on survivor lines on their lip and all, this person's been to courage lines that come on the cheeks. I mean, these people have been through really tough stuff. And, they probably don't, they don't talk about it that much. I mean, people don't want to hear it. But when you say to them, well, you've gone through, you don't know what the details are, you've gone through really tough stuff. And then they'll say, well, yeah, I took care of my mother for almost 10 years every day. And I just, lost her last year and I'm still not over it. I mean, they're able to say that you're giving them permission to bring out some of the things that happened. And I always think when things come out in the light, then a healing can take place. Mm-hmm. Healing doesn't take place inside in the dark. It comes when it comes out in the open. And not only does a healing take place, but then it changes and it becomes a gift called empathy, which we can't get out of a book. So it can transform people into appreciating their life, all the parts of it, not just the successes, the things that are their successes, or maybe the things they own or whatever, but who they really are. It unlocks that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is interesting how much just talking about someone's face, they really do open up and they're so excited to share about what they've been through,
right.
Things. And when you're in a group, it's fun how, like to dinner with someone, a group of people, then they all chime in and it is a bonding,
mm-hmm.
validating thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's like, do me. Now, I remember when I was first learning to do it, I had the book. I mean, the book looked beat up because I was referring to it so much. But I remember a flight I was on and I was always practiced because everybody had a seatbelt on. They couldn't go anywhere, and I had a captured audience and I could, I'm trying to understand how to do this. Could I practice on you? And of course, people, for the most part, really like being focused on. But anyway, I'll never forget this one flight. And I'll tell you, it was like, no, do me. Well, and it was a flight where, at Southwest Airlines, where the one row looks the other direction. I don't know if you were on Southwest, but the front two rows actually face each other.
Wow.
Anyway, so I don't know how many faces I ended up reading, but it was really pretty good. And nobody minded being told things as long as they were being seen of what was on their face. But I will tell you one story that kind of capsulizes what I was saying about things coming out in the light. I was actually in first class and I had the book out and so I looked up and this man comes on the plane and he looked like a CEO of a company. I mean, he was just reeked of that kind of presence. And his face was just all power. He had big jaws. He had a big chin. He had a big nose. I mean, he was brilliant. His forehead was big and all this. And so, wow, that guy is one powerful dude. And as luck would have it, he came and he sat down beside me. And, but he sat down, he put his stuff in the bin and then he sat down and he saw the book out in front of me. He said, what's that? Face reading? I said, yeah. I said, I'm trying to learn how to do this. And actually, when you stepped on the plane, I looked at your face right away and I'm really glad you're going to sit down here, but do you mind if I try to read it? And he said, no. He said, I guess not. He wasn't really too happy about it, but anyway, he caved. And so I started telling him about this power, not afraid of competition, given a level playing field, you're as good as the other. You've got to be in authority. His nose, you can't be a worker bee. You got to be the owner, the supervisor, the manager. You're brilliant. You worked hard at developing and stretching your intellect, on and on like that. But then I saw a feature that I had never read on anybody. Now, I got to just go to a little side here. I treated my face reading book like a bird watching book. Now, my parents were bird watchers and they traveled all over the place. And when they looked for birds all the time, and when they had a positive identification, they would write in the book where they were and what the date was. And so that's how they did their bird watching. And they would show me their book and all that. Well, I started using my face reading book like that. When I saw a feature I'd never read before, I would find it in the book, because I was going to be able to write in there, where I was and the date. He had very small irises, really small irises. You could see a lot of white, but really tiny irises. And irises are about people who are actually have some temerity. They don't want people. They don't like loud noises. They don't like people shouting at them. That is very, very difficult for them. Even this guy with all this power going on. And I looked at him and said, wow, I see that you have very small irises. And I told him what it meant. And then I'm looking in my book because I wanted to find the page because I'm going to be able to write it down and all. And when I turned back and I looked at him, there were tears running down his cheeks. And he just kind of shook his head and he said, my wife yells all the time. She yells at the cat, she yells at the dog, she yells at me. I don't know. I can't take it anymore. I mean, this CEO is letting this out. And because it really struck him. And that's what I was talking about. Wow. Where do you think that man would have ever gotten? Would he go off to a shrink? Would he tell one of his VPs that he's scared when his wife yells at him? I mean, no, he kept it all shoved down. And here it came out into the light. And now a healing could take place, a change in this person. So we had a great flight. It was really one of the best ever. And when we got off the plane in Chicago, bye, see you, like that. Because, it's an airplane and everybody gets off. But it's not the end of the story, because later that day, I'm the reformed person now. Remember, I go home before 7:00. I don't stay late at night. And I'm walking to my apartment in Chicago, and I hear this man. I hear somebody saying, Ann. I'm crossing one of the plazas, and I don't turn around because it's a busy area and Ann's such a common name. So I don't turn around, but he wouldn't stop. So I stopped and turned around, and here it was the man from the airplane in the morning.
Oh my goodness.
With a business buddy. He was dragging this man across the plaza to me. He said, oh, I want you to meet this woman. She's going to read your face. So I actually did see him again. True story.
Oh my
I love
goodness.
That is healing that couldn't take place any other way.
And that story just gives me goosebumps. I love it so much. Wow. Yeah. Well, that's magic right there.
It is. It is. When two people show up in the same space, in the same present moment, when we're present, it is magic. And the thing about face reading is the person reading the face has to show up. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't be thinking about what you're going to have for dinner and read somebody's face. You have to be there. You have to show up. For the person to get their face read, they have to show up. So the very fact that the two people are meeting in the present moment is the magic. And that's where the connection. There's no connection unless we're present.
Right.
This automatically does that. And it really isn't even about being right when sometimes some people say, oh, well, I don't know enough of the, features and what they mean and all that. Just looking at somebody and trying, well, I think your chin, it's people connecting.
Yes.
When I was on a trip one time, we were coming home and the plane got delayed. And it was when I was very first learning. And I had my flashcards, because that's my favorite way to learn, is those flashcards. And we were sitting there, it was delayed. It was a tour. So the whole group is there. And I took those, you're bored. So I took my flashcards, and everybody wanted to get their face read. So I would go through that bundle and hand them the card that they had the feature of. And then I would get them all back and read it off to them. And I was really just reading it, but that connection was still there from saying those words. I do remember the one guy that was the CEO of the company, one of the companies that was sponsoring this thing. And he was the one who had the most tears in his eyes for being acknowledged. And it was his courage lines that he was most touched by.
Neat.
So you don't have to be a professional to connect with people with face reading.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, and those,
Not even the villains on cartoons. I loved learning this, that the villain always has that pointed chin.
Cartoonists are some of the best.
Downturned nose.
Right.
Eh? Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
You're like reading the villains' faces now in movies.
Well, it's portrayed that way because that gives you that feeling. You unconsciously feel it when you look at someone's face, even though you don't name it.
Yeah.
See, that is the first feature that I memorized. It's the chin out.
Yeah.
Well, Anne, it's been so delightful to have you here and to learn your story. I've known you this long and didn't know all those details. That is fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for sharing.
Very, very nice.
And Anne, before you go, we do like to ask our guests, what is your superpower? You have a lot, Anne. Which one are you strongest in?
One of the big parts of my life since I've moved, for the last 5 years, is as a volunteer for hospice. And hospice was important for my mother. She was in hospice actually less than 48 hours, 2 days, when she passed, but it made a huge difference. And I was with her. And then the same with my sister, my younger sister, had hospice for 2 days before she passed. And I decided that I wanted to become a hospice volunteer. So it's 6 years now, 7 years ago, in Texas, where I became a hospice volunteer. But to start, I didn't feel after the losses I had strong enough to actually be with patients. I worked in the office in Fort Worth for almost 3 years. And then when I moved to Florida, I knew that first thing I needed to do was become a hospice volunteer here. Excuse me. But I was ready to be with patients. So over the last 5 years, I've done work with the patients. And the vigil work that I do, which is sitting with somebody who doesn't have any family, and so that they don't die alone. And I will stay with them through the night and everything, and basically help them pass on. There's a program here at the hospital. It's called No One Dies Alone. And I'm in charge of that program, where the hospital will call and say, this person has no family. Here in Florida, that's not that uncommon, because people come down here from very far, the northern states,
to
and they don't
retire.
often, their families can't get here and all that. But at any rate, so many times I've been truly blessed and honored to be with people in their final hours. And I know that I've helped them transition onto the next life. And if to have them even find forgiveness in the end, like I tell them, you always did the best you could do. The outcome may not have been what you wanted, but you were doing the best you could do. So I don't know if it's a superpower or whatever, but I know I help people die, and it's a really important part of who I am now.
And that is a superpower. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really a blessing. So to be able to be with people. And then sometimes their families arrive, but then they can meet the person that was with them in the end, and that gives them a connection.
Yes.
You can tell them how it was and everything like that. So
Wow, that is a gift you give.
yeah.
Yes.
So, and even with the face reading, like this person is in their final hours and all, but I can see on their face their life, not in detail, like events and things like that, but I can talk to them about, in those times you went through that hurt so much. You'll meet the person on the other side,
Oh my
or
goodness,
whatever.
Anne.
So you
That's
see
awesome.
their gifts are still, on their face, even with the dementia people. No, it's still there. So, to make it more personal for them, because they're unique.
Wow.
They're unique for them.
Yep.
Oh my-
Validating them once again.
Yeah.
Wow.
And your journey all along the way led you up to this.
Yeah. It did. It did. Absolutely.
This is where you were meant to be.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you all for having me.
Yes. Okay. Have a great day.
Have
All
a good
right.
day, Anne.
All
It was
right.
such a pleasure to meet you.
All right. Same here.
Okay.
Thanks, Marcy. Thanks,
Thank you.
Trina.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow. She helps people die.
Isn't that amazing?
I
Who
can't
would think of that?
imagine, Serena, that touches me, and I don't know. That's wild to me.
Yep. What a gift
Wild.
that you don't even think of.
Oh, wow.
That is a need.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep. Save people from being alone.
Wowie. All right. Well,